participated in one or more of the assassination conspiracies or related murders or attempted murders, plus the individuals who knowingly participated or are still participating in the cover-ups of those conspiracies or murders. The PCG includes any people in the CIA, FBI, Justice Department, Secret Service, local police departments or service offices in LA, Memphis, Dallas, New Orleans, or Florida, judges, district attorneys, state attorneys general, other federal government agencies, the House of Representatives, the Senate, the White House, the Congress, or the Department of Defense, as well as any people in the media who are under the influence of any of the above, who participated or are participating in the cover-ups or the cover-ups of the cover-up. There are indications that people in every one of the above organizations or groups belong to the PCG. Now let's take a look at an example how they cover up an event. So number one, to block or eliminate anybody that against them. Okay. Number two, to firmly implant the idea that is totally not related to the event. So they technically create another plot so that everybody will think the false story is the original event. Number three, to block any attempts to investigate on the cases. Number four, to control the people at the top in order to control the investigation. Now let's take a look at the strategy when anybody that go against them. Number one, attack, discredit that person by using, of course, the media. Number two, using the media to spread propaganda and control the sources of all stories concerning that person or the investigation. Number three, using the government to provide biased, distorted quotes to the media. Number four, again, discredit the entire community that goes against them. Here is the rest of the list. You can go through it by pausing this video. TV shows. Both NBC and CBS are planning major TV specials on the assassinations. For example, is how the media additionally, apart from the news reporting, they also create special TV shows to continue implant their ideas into the mass public. CIA agent. One of the more remarkable things about the mass 1977 campaign of the CIA and the PCG is their blatant use of freelance writers and news reporters who are well-known CIA agents to really anyone who has taken the time to pay attention. Three agents are Priscilla McMillan and her husband, George McMillan, and Jeremiah O'Leary. Of the Washington Star, Priscilla is so obviously an agent that even Dick Cavett indirectly accused her of being one when she appeared on his show with Marina Oswald to plug her new book. The CIA decided the perfect time to publish McMillan's book, which had been completed for several years. A publisher under CIA control was selected, and the book was published in time for the December committee budget vote. The CIA arranged that Marina appeared with Pat on several national TV shows. Priscilla had Marina well rehearsed for these shows. She even retold the old lies about Oswald shooting at General Walker. The commentators selected to interview both women, including Dick Cavett, David Hartman, and Tom Slider, had their orders to deal delicately with them and not to ask any embarrassing questions. Cavett came closest with his essentially accusatory question about whether Priscilla was a CIA agent. This monumental PCG effort that involved controlling at least 3 TV networks, a CIA publisher, Marina, a CIA agent, Priscilla, an enormous amount of time and money, and a special book reviewed by the New York Times demonstrates how much power the PCG has, democracy and freedom. By the end of 1973, a relatively large percentage of the American people still did not relate any of the foregoing incidents or situations to their own individual liberties. They believed patriotically in America. They believed we still had democracy. They believed that President Nixon, with his wise ways and business experience, would pull us out of whatever problems we had. It sounds like the previous president, with his wise ways and business experience, would pull us out of whatever problems we had, but it didn't. The people refused to consider the possibility that unknown forces have seized control over the U.S. for the last, I think, from the beginning of the inception, they created U.S. Chapter 9, Control of the Media. As mentioned in Chapter 1, one of the two clever strategies used by the Power Control Group in the taking of America has been the control of the news media. For those American citizens who steadfastly refuse to believe that all of the American establishment news media could be controlled by the CIA and its friends in the White House, the continuing support of the Warren Commission's lone assassin conclusion by virtually all of the major news media organizations in November 1975, 12 years after the event, must have been very puzzling indeed. Since 78% of the public believed that there was a conspiracy in the case, there must be a series of questions in the minds of the most intelligent of the 78% about the media's position on the subject. This chapter is intended to enlighten readers and to remind them of the control exercised by the intelligence community and the White House over the 15 organizations from whom the public gets the vast majority of its news and opinions. Let's begin with 1968 to 1969. By 1973, the American public had begun to develop a skepticism toward information they received on television or radio. Various news stories appearing in our national news media through those years had brought about this attitude. The general reaction was bound to be, don't believe everything you read, see, or hear, especially the first time around, and more especially if the story comes from Washington. In the case of the Pentagon Papers, things we all had taken as gospel for nearly 2 decades suddenly seemed to crumble. To what extent can the national news media be held responsible for this situation? What has happened to the inquiring reporter and the crusading editor who are both searching for and printing the truth? If a government or a president lies or keeps secrets, can the American newsletter really find out about it? And if they do, what moral, ethical, political, or other criteria should they use in uncovering the lies and presenting them to the public? The answer to some of these questions can be found by taking an inside look at the major national news media organizations during 1968 and 1969 and how they treated the most controversial news subject since World War II. The assassination of John F. Kennedy and its aftermath is an all-pervading honest topic, precisely because it is still such a controversial subject. Verboten for discussion among all major news media, it serves as an excellent case study. A categorical statement can be made that management and editorial policy, measured by what is printed and broadcast in all major American news media organizations, supports the findings of the Warren Commission. This has been true since 1969, but it was not true between 1964 and 1969. Of significance in this analysis and what it implies about the American public's knowledge about the assassination and its aftermath is a definition of major American national news media. It can be demonstrated that an overwhelming mass of news information reaching the eyes and ears of Americans comes from about 15 organizations. There are, in general order of significance, NBC and Radio, CBS and Radio, ABC and Radio, Associated Press, United Press, Sport Illustrated, Business Week, Newsweek, U.S. News, New York Times, Washington Post, Metro Media News Network, Westinghouse Radio News Network, Capital City Broadcasting Radio Network, the North American Newspaper Alliance, and the Saturday Evening Post. There are some subtle reasons for this, not generally appreciated by the average citizen. Television has, of course, become the primary source of information for any nationally circulated news story. Local stations rely heavily on film, videotape, and written script material prepared and edited by the three networks. Once in a while, Metro Media may also send out TV material. In fact, this means that editorial content for a vast majority of the television information seen by American citizens everywhere originates not only with 3 or 4 organizations, but also with a very small number of producers, editors, and commentators in those networks. A large majority of any national news items printed by local newspapers originates in a small number of press wire services. AP and UP dominate this area, with selected chains of papers subscribing to a lesser extent to new services of the New York Times, Washington Post, North American Newspaper Alliance, and a very small percentage receiving information from papers in Los Angeles, Chicago, and St. Louis. In a national news story of major significance, such as the assassination of John Kennedy, the smaller local papers rely almost exclusively on their affiliated news services. Economic reasons dictate this situation. The small paper can afford to have reporters everywhere. The major newspapers might send a man to Dallas for a few days to cover the assassination, or they might send a man to New Orleans to cover the Clay Shaw trial. But even the major newspapers can't afford to cover every part of a continuing story anywhere around the world, so they too rely on UP and AP for much of their material. They also rely on AP, UP, and Black Star for most of their photographic material. In the case of news magazines, the holding corporations become important in forming editorial policy in a situation as controversial as the assassination of JFK. Time and Life, Newsweek, and the Washington Post, U.S. News, and McGraw-Hill's managements all became involved. 15 organizations is a surprisingly small number, and one is led to conjecture about how easy or difficult it might be to control or dictate editorial policy for all of them, or some appreciable majority of them. An article in Computers and Automation reprinted a statement by John Rarick, Louisiana congressman, and an entry made in the Congressional Record bearing on this subject. In the reprint, the Government Employee Exchange publication is quoted as stating that the CIA new team used secret cooperating and liaison groups after the Bay of Pigs in the large foundations, banks, and newspapers to change U.S. domestic and foreign relations through the infiltration of these organizations. The coordinating role at the New York Times was in the custody of Harding Bancroft, Executive Vice President. A useful analysis consists of examining what happened organizationally and editorially inside each of the 15 companies following the assassination of President Kennedy. My personal knowledge plus information available from a few sources connected with the major news media permits such an analysis to be made for 11 of the 15. They are NBC, CBS, ABC, Time, Life, The New York Times, Newsweek, Associated Press, United Press, Saturday Evening Post, Capital City Broadcasting, and North American Newspaper Alliance. In addition, the performance of 9 local newspapers and TV stations directly involved in the events in Dallas and New Orleans will be analyzed. These include Dallas Times Herald, Dallas Morning News, Fort Worth Star Telegram, Dallas CBS, New Orleans Times, New Orleans Times Herald, and New Orleans NBC. Most of these organizations had reporters and photographers in Dallas at the time of the assassination or within a few hours thereafter. Most of them had direct coverage available when Jim Garrison's investigation broke into the news in 1967 and during the trial of Clay Shaw in New Orleans in 1969. For many of them, the Shaw trial became the running point in the changing of editorial policy toward the assassination. For a few, the Garrison investigation and the Shaw trial took on the aspect of waving a red flag in front of a bull. They became directly involved in a negative way and thus not only reported the news but also biased it. In each and every case, internal findings were overruled, suppressed, locked up, edited, and otherwise altered to back up the Warren Commission. Management at the highest editorial and corporate level took the action in every instance. Before drawing any further generalization about the performance of the media in the JFK case, it will be revealing to examine what happened and specifically who took what actions in the case of the 11 national organizations and the 9 local ones listed earlier.